Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning, gang.
Good morning.
Nice to see you both so bright and early in the morning. How are we feeling? How are we doing? How hot is it in Barcelona, Sarah?
It's like 36 degrees. It is too hot to do anything.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it. That's the worst, isn't it?
Confession time. No exercise this morning at all. Woke up at like 7:30. Was going to go for a run. 34 degrees at 7:30 in the morning. Thought that's not happening. So back to bed for me for another half hour until this.
You know it's not sensible to run when it's as hot as like a Bikram yoga class would be at 7:30 in the morning. It's just hideous.
Yeah. I thought about it, and then I thought, well, I could go to the gym, but do I really want to go run on a treadmill? Like, it's just not my vibe, you know?
I'm with you. I've done nothing this morning as well. I've just managed to dress myself. Rafi, good morning, friend.
Yeah, can't say I've done too much this morning either. We've got the same heat wave situation in France. Honestly, it's been, average of 35 degrees every single day this week.
Summer's here, guys, isn't it? We're really in the midst of it.
I will point out that it's August, so Europe, August. We're not required to do anything for the whole next month, I think. That's how it works. No? Fine.
And at that point, we'll be cutting the podcast here because it is the month of August. So no one's expected to work. Actually, it's amazing I managed to get you two to turn up in August, isn't it? Wow.
It's because it's the first, isn't it? It's like the first couple of days you're gonna get in there, obviously. But second half of August, I don't know, buddy.
Well, yeah, good luck trying to get you on. But it's funny, isn't it? Because Sarah, as an American, this must be your favorite thing about living in August. Sorry, living in August. I'm saying living in Europe, right?
It used to frustrate me because all of my favorite shops and all of my favorite restaurants are closed. I remember like it being shocking when I would first go to like a shop and it would just say, sorry, closed, coming back on September 1st. I'm like, what? You just closed down for an entire month? What am I supposed to do?
And now you've embraced it and now you love it, basically, right?
Now I've embraced it. It's like, fine, I won't go to a restaurant. I'll just make a sandwich and sit on a park bench and people watch, It's fine.
So we still don't have this mentality in the UK. Maybe this is what caused Brexit, guys, right? This slight discrepancy between how we see the month of August. We still see the month of August as a month where you're supposed to work. And you chat to someone in mid-July and they go, yeah, we better get it done soon or it's going to be at least September. And you're like, that's unacceptable. That's 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Don't say that to me. Okay, gang, here we are. Lovely to see you both. Summer's in full swing. The Olympics is here. Lots of exciting things. I was delighted to see they managed to get the triathlon done in the Seine, in the river, because that was at risk. I was getting ready to tease Rafi about how Londoners put on a better show than Parisians and the French. But unfortunately, I looked yesterday and the triathlon did happen, so that I can't tease Rafi too much about that. What's the mood like in France, Rafi?
Yeah, I think the mood is good. It seems like they're pulling it off even at the last minute when we're least expecting it to. So, I mean, I think the opening ceremony was a huge success. And that's really got the mood going. Parisians are, French people love to complain, so they're never really fully happy. They always have something to say. But yeah, I do hear some comments. Local businesses in Paris aren't experiencing the same levels of business as they would usually in summer because the Olympic tourism is just not quite the same. And also hospitality providers across the country are kind of seeing the hits because a lot of the Parisians are actually just renting out their own second homes when they go on holiday in August to get away from Paris. So some other short-term rental providers aren't getting quite the same amount of business as they would usually. But this is all sort of expected to bounce back once the Olympics is over. And I would say that probably this tourism is going to end up coming back at different periods of the year to make up for the fact that they weren't able to come because they wanted to avoid the crowds.
Yeah, interesting. Let's get straight into that and then we can sort of reverse back to other parts because it's interesting. Does a city like Paris need the Olympics? That's, I guess, what we've said over the last couple of weeks, isn't it, on the pod? Because when you've got a high level of interest in your country, in your city, anyway, and I think we're in the article we're looking at really great article by Thibaut Masson. Shout out to him because it's a really detailed look at what's been going on. You know, in 2023, France attracted over 100 million tourists. And at this point in the year, you know,
Wow.
they're not looking like they're going to hit that figure. Let's see where we get to perhaps we judge it at the end of the year. But I guess the preparation for the Olympics has put people off traveling to Paris before. And obviously now you're getting a hit of tourists coming for the event. So, you know, bookings have increased by 400% compared to last year, and more supply on the market as well, because people are thinking it's time to cash in. Even because of those things, you've maybe seen a negative effect in people not coming before. Like you say, Rafi, potentially people will come afterwards. And it just does raise the question about whether, if you have such a tourist friendly, you know, big capital city, whether it is actually the right thing to do. Interestingly as well, I hadn't realized that the organizers had made such an effort to bring smaller cities around Paris and France in general into the mix when it comes to hosting events. Really good idea. And those cities are seeing a short-term rental bounce, which is clearly very good for their economies and will spread the benefit of the games around the country. Is there anything going on in your area, Rafi?
Nothing. Not in our area. But we might be hosting the Olympics 2030, the Winter Olympics.
There we go. Wow. It's something
Not
to talk
100%
about.
sure yet, but been mentioned.
Incredible for OVO if it does. Wow, how exciting.
Super exciting.
What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, it's super interesting that we keep choosing all these major cities, I guess, for the Olympics. I mean, I think it's not the first time we've seen this, where events are starting to be spread out in different locations. I think that's maybe, rather than like a city, it should be a country that hosts the Olympics, and we should look at it a lot differently. Especially a city like Paris. I don't think it needs the extra tourism necessarily. Like, fine, have a couple of events there, but to me, I don't know. I mean, at least they're not doing it in Venice. We talked about last week. That would be a real disaster. But I don't know. I think maybe like countries is a better way to go. Have a host country, and be interesting to get people in nooks and crannies of the country where maybe you wouldn't typically go. Highlight smaller towns. I think for tourism, especially for our industry, it would be really big. So I don't know. Nobody listens to me, but you know, they're for Olympic Council.
They should.
Like,
This is the point we find that the city
Yeah,
of Venice
they
has decided to try and host the Olympics, and you'll be right again, Sarah. Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Again, for any STR hosts that are listening in Paris or in and around France, tell us what your experiences have been and how is it affecting your market. Clearly, even if in 2024 Paris sees a slight dip because they've hosted the games, there is also the argument that it could be beneficial longer term to tourist growth and for the whole of France in general, like showcasing your city, showcasing your country. And it takes me back to that really famous image off the diving board at Barcelona 1992. Now I'm slightly showing my age here, but I think as Rafi, the marketing person, you probably have seen the image. You probably do know what I'm talking about. It's like every time someone goes up off the diving board, you see the Sagrada Familia in the background, and said that was a huge reason why Barcelona is the way it is today. Sarah, you tell us if you think that's right. I don't know. It just seems like a city that really benefited from having the Olympics, right?
all the locals say that it, like, Barcelona pre-Olympics and post-Olympics, it's a completely different Barcelona. And then obviously that trajectory has continued, and it's really been exponential over the last, say, 10 to 15 years. But yeah, any local you speak to will say the Olympics changed Barcelona. The question is for the better. We don't know.
At that time,
now that they're shooting them with water guns.
Touristy at all, right? It was like an industrial city, and that there weren't any travelers going there, so there was potential for that growth. Whereas Paris, it's already got that tourist attraction going fully.
And that's the thing. Yeah, I think if it was more of a holistic, like a country hosting the Olympics, there'd be ways to highlight all kinds of different cities. There'd be ways to spread out that tourism throughout the whole country. If you're a promoter of that destination, obviously you're loving that, because it's not just an already well-known place. It's multiple locations. So I don't know. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean,
Who do
yeah.
we submit it to?
Again, maybe that might be the long tail benefit of putting it around France, right? It might be that Americans and such see the Americans, that is the group that seem to want to travel to Europe in their droves, and clearly have a really good spending power. So I think if you long term, you might have brought another city into the mix that didn't have much of a tread before. We talk about this. We talked about it on the pod, and we talk about it definitely in the industry is, as a short-term rental operator, it's just trying to attach yourself to something that's going on, an event, and put your marketing and things around that. It's something like that is a real home run, just to have that going on, and then you build the infrastructure, and you can also bid for other types of competitions later on. Cool. Okay, nice guys. Let's go back. SDR highlights. I think I've got very, very timely. So we're seeing campsites, micro campsites in the news recently. I think because it's midsummer, and it's the only time of year in England that you'd want to camp because it might actually be warm enough. That limited 3-week window where you wouldn't freeze in the middle of the night. I'm not much a traditional camper. Let's say that. So we as a family went with another family, and we went to one of these micro campsites. So someone had opened up their back garden, they'd provided cooking facilities and a shower, and oh my god, it was incredible, guys. Like, we had the sunset all to ourselves. The kids ran around in a field, and I'm here to tell you that if this is a trend, I'm here for it, because it was just phenomenal. So that was definitely my highlight of the week. But honestly, called, the family we went with camped properly, whereas we rented a bell tent for £200. Amazing cheap. We had a real bed, duvet, pillows, all that sort of stuff. But so look, it's there. I would encourage everybody to try and look at micro campsites. They're just super fun.
That sounds fab. I think that's the thing that turns me off about camping. Like, I don't want to be on a campsite with like 300 other people, but the idea of like doing it in a small group and maybe even hosted by a local, which is more of like an authentic experience, and you have a more rural environment, especially I can imagine with kids. It's that I might sign up for, especially on the glamping side. I would want a real bed, I think. And like, if there's like a mini air conditioning unit in there, that would also be great.
That's the American view coming out.
I'm trying to do it in 36 degrees, there's no way I'm camping. If it's like 25, then great. Sign me up.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's definitely this time of year you'd want to be in Western France or England, right, to have a good time, or the Scandies, or the Scandi countries doing that. Well, let's do it, guys. Let's have a camping trip. I think it'll be great. I think, and you guys can help with the kids, and it'll be lovely. Alrighty, Sarah, any SDR highlights for you?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing, just wanted to touch on some of the kind of EU review of what's happening in Europe and the industry in general. So most of the data is from the end of June, and then some data looking forward into August. So kind of the highlight is that demand is continuing to grow. So there was actually a record high of demand nights in June, 44.5 million demand nights, which is an 18.6% growth year over year. However, supply growth is pacing almost at the same rate. So 3.8 million listings were added in June, which is 14.8% year over year growth. And so that's basically keeping occupancy rates stable at 59%, a mere 1.4% increase year over year. So obviously that's also impacting average daily rates, and they have been plateauing significantly over the last 6 months. There's been, again, 1.4% in growth. So the same as kind of the occupancy. So that's sort of what we were talking about over the last few weeks and in general. And I think in Paris as well, we're seeing that same phenomenon. So as demand grows, supply is growing to meet it. And that's really making average nightly rates and occupancy rates pretty stagnant. The biggest amount of demand is being led by the Nordic countries. But again, same takeaways. Increased competition is basically meaning that revenue gains for hosts in these areas are relatively small. Most of the growth in demand is in urban areas and suburban areas. So kind of the top 50 cities are still the biggest growers in terms of demand, but also in supply. And a lot of this is driven by foreign travelers, so people coming from outside of the country. And then the other interesting one for August is concert goers are driving the demand here. So in particular, in Munich, Vienna, and Bucharest. Munich is seeing a 109% increase year over year demand in August, in particular due to a concert from Adele. She's also going to 10 other markets in Europe. Vienna is looking at a 58% increase year over year. They have Taylor Swift and Coldplay coming in August. And Bucharest, 56% increase year over year. They're hosting Ed Sheeran. And then as a point of comparison, Paris for the Olympics, 41% increase year over year. So apparently Adele is more popular than the Olympics in terms of demand growth drivers. I don't know.
And-
well, we all knew that about Taylor Swift already, right?
Yeah, at least in percentage points, right? I mean, maybe not in total number of nights, but percentage growth. Yeah, Adele and Taylor Swift, more popular. I don't know about Coldplay. Jury remains out.
I think it's surely much easier to host Adele than host the whole Olympics as well. So that's a no-brainer, isn't it? I think on the sentiment on this podcast would be definitely Adele and Taylor Swift over the Olympics. I'm sent. So there's something in that, isn't there? Very, very interesting. Amazing how even with all the regulatory challenges, we're still seeing the supply growth across Europe. I wonder when the market will settle in that respect, or whether we'll always be in this position where supply and demand are growing, sometimes supply outweighing demand growth. But I do find it interesting. I also had a thought. I saw on LinkedIn somebody looking at someone saying, "Oh, tired of being bashed as a tourist. Try Sarajevo," which, I mean, for any people who like their World War I history, a very significant city of Europe and its past, and an amazing architecture and stuff going on. And it did make me think. I wonder now, and Sarah, you'll hopefully be able to get us this data at the end of the summer. I wonder if we are going to start to see these slightly more off the beaten track destinations grow now as countries and cities change their policy towards how they view tourists and how many tourists they want and the type of tourists that they want to have in their cities. I don't know if either of you have a view on that. Rafi?
I would hope so. I don't know if that's really going to happen. I think that the mentality is changing. I mean, we have discussed this a couple times on the pod. But people will always be attracted by the big cities, and that's kind of where the hub is. But we'll see. We'll see how it evolves. I definitely like to avoid the more crowded places as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm in a similar vein. I think the interesting thing about our industry is that, unlike the hotel industry, we are very nimble. And so short-term rentals in general are a great way to kind of capture and test out some of that increase in demand. If you build supply and different types of cities start hosting different types of events, maybe to drive visitors there, then our industry can be the first to respond kind of to that increase in demand. So I think that's at least the good thing. Whereas if you're building a hotel, then that probably takes, 2 years. You want to really make sure that that is going to be a place that you're going to want to stay. And with a short-term rental, then that supply is much more fluid. So if the demand starts to grow, I'm sure the supply will rise to meet it and will be the forefront.
Yeah, I think we saw it with Portugal, didn't we, over the last 10 years as well. Those Porto and Lisbon really grew off the back of short-term rental, and now obviously the Porto mayor's taking one approach, the Lisbon mayor's taking another. That good old civic rivalry there and going on in Europe. Let's keep an eye on it. Let's see what cities will surprise us by the end of the summer that have popped up. But I love the idea. I must say, I love the idea of summer in Sarajevo. Gang, this is a fun story. Well, maybe it isn't. I don't know. Rafi, tell us how you feel about this one. This is from Rental Scale Up. The Wolf of Airbnb, Conrad Bircher behind bars. Rafi.
Yeah, so self-proclaimed Wolf of Airbnb, Conrad Bircher, is heading to prison. So basically, this is a guy, a US, American, who leased 18 Manhattan apartments and subletted them as short-term rentals in a city where obviously that's been illegal for years. This happened between 2019 and 2022. And then on top of that, he refused to pay his landlords the rent. And then since this was happening during COVID, there were a bunch of tenant protection laws that were in place, which he took advantage of. And essentially the tenants couldn't evict him throughout all those years. He collected over $1 million in rent from 2019 to 2022. And he also stole more than $500,000 from the federal COVID relief program. So really taking advantage of all the COVID laws coming into play. And then just to really top it all off, he was bragging about his lavish lifestyle, posting photos on social media about helicopter rides, private jets, vacations, all of that, whilst just refusing to pay rent to his landlords. So this guy really had no shame. Like, he wasn't trying to hide the fact that he was doing any of this. I mean, I think he made it really obvious through what he was posting. But he's ended up being sentenced to 4 years in prison. And also he's been fined a very, very heavy amount. So 1.7 million to forfeit to court, and also an additional 2.2 million in restitution is owed. So pretty wild story. I would say, I mean, I was researching this, and illegal Airbnbs are a real issue. In the US alone, what I was hearing is that travelers say about 30% of the time their Airbnb host asks them to say that they're friends and that they're not renting the apartment, as a means to kind of get away with any regulations that are in place. And then when the travelers complain to Airbnb about it, apparently Airbnb do nothing. So this is a real issue. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. I think that there's a lot to say about rental arbitrage. I know that Airbnb, a couple episodes ago, we mentioned the fact, it was back in April, I believe, that Airbnb wanted to work with governments to ensure that renters were able to do short-term rentals with the property that they're renting from a landlord. And I think that that's kind of just exacerbating the issue and maybe making it a little bit easier for people to do illegal rentals. But yeah, really interested to hear what you guys think about this story and how this can affect our industry.
It's a super interesting one. Rental arbitrage has been around. It's way more popular in the US, for sure. In most rental contracts, at least that I've always had in Europe, or in Spain, that clause is always there. There's no possibility to sublet the apartment. It's sort of a standard clause in most long-term rental contracts. And so, whereas in the US, everything's a lot more flexible. It's easier to kind of go to a landlord and say, hey, you're asking $1,200 a month. I'll give you $1,500 a month and sign a 2-year lease if you let me sublet the apartment. And then they keep, kind of whatever's left. I'm of two minds. It's a great way to allow people to get into the industry who maybe don't have the capital to purchase a property, or maybe they're unsure about a market. And so it allows for de-risk if you're trying to get into the short-term rental business. So I can see the benefits there. When that's taking place in cities with high rent tensions for long-term residents like New York or Barcelona, then that can be a lot more controversial. Because in that instance, it really is taking off long-term supply, or what would be long-term supply, and putting it on as a short-term rental. So I think that is an interesting one. I'll make a quick comment on the illegal, I guess, rentals as well. I had one of those in Paris when we went for a conference. When we were looking for the flat, we rang the host, and they were basically like, yeah. So you see that parking garage? You go down to the parking, through to the second, like -2 floor in the basement of the parking. And then through the actual car park was the door. And it was obviously like the office of whoever was originally supposed to manage the car park. And they had turned it into an apartment. There was like no ventilation. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. We obviously complained to the host and was like, this is so illegal. What is this? And then we complained to Airbnb, and they basically did nothing. They just said, hey, we've reprimanded the host and told them that, they're going to have to remove the listing. And I think they removed the listing, but it's not going to keep other travelers from going there. I don't know. It was crazy to me. That whole, how do you rent something in a car park and think that's acceptable? I don't.
I think
So there's no way they had a license.
For me, the biggest issue with this is that it's just making our industry look very unprofessional. And that's kind of one of the main reasons people don't want to do short-term rentals, is because of that. There's that risk that they're going to end up in something that's illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Drags us all down, doesn't it? Drags us all down, stuff like that. We all get tarred with the same brush, right? Especially by the way, that's wild, Sarah. And
it
sorry,
was insane. We immediately got there and thought, we're going to be here as little as possible.
But did you
no
did you
way.
sleep there, or did you go and stay in a hotel?
mean, yeah, we sat there like there was a huge event. There was conferences. There was some other kind of big sporting event. Like this was one of the last properties that we could find. We decided to go to this conference at the last minute. So it was a group of us traveling for work as well. It was supposed to be like a 4-bedroom place. We got there. There was 1 bedroom, and then there was like a sleeper sofa. And it was no, it was real bad. Luckily, I was traveling with 3 male colleagues who were very kind to me and let me have the bedroom, and they all just like crouched on the floor. It was bad, y'all. It was so
The
bad.
listing on Airbnb, I guess, did you book on Airbnb?
Yeah, it was on Airbnb.
And
We
the
booked it.
listing
Yeah,
was
and they had set things up as if like they'd done this staging where they had it looked like there were multiple beds, and so in theory it could be and then they put that there was multiple bedrooms, and you're like, there's no way. No, it was bad. For me, the worst bit was through the car park. I could have handled the bedroom situation, but not like going down 2 flights of stairs through the car park and having no ventilation. No.
We do always,
that is
we want to offer unique experiences in the industry, and I think we've just offered you an incredibly unique one there. So, bravo, short-term
Yes.
rentals. No, it's the beauty of our industry is the fact that the barrier to entry is very, very low. I think I've said that before on the pod, right? So you can throw up a listing, and
Yeah.
that's also a negative for this obvious reason, isn't it? And I think as an industry, we do have an unspoken about fraudulent listing problem. Don't know what the solution is, but I guess, and we're going to touch on in the next article and talk about the OTA world, but clearly the OTA views their role as being to provide you with a place to stay, and if you're a host, to get you a booking, but it doesn't really seem to want to do any of the due diligence in the middle. And I think there's still a misconception with travelers that someone has done the due diligence for you in the curation. I've said before, I cut my teeth in vacation rental, the short-term rental, working at One Fine Stay. I was part of the team that helped build, grow, and sell that business to Accor Hotels. We were doing that curation in the middle, and people at that time wouldn't know the difference between us, One Fine Stay, and Airbnb. They wouldn't see that there's that difference. And Rafi, you'll know this, right? It must be something that you find frustrating at OVO Network, right? Is that you've handpicked your chalets, you have a relationship with your owners, and you really know what's going on in those listings, but you might get beaten on price by someone that just throws up a listing around the corner who's not done any of that due diligence, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe less common for us. There are only so many chalets and people. I mean, I think it would be more common when we're talking about a city and there are plenty of apartments that can just pop up out of nowhere. But yeah, it's definitely frustrating for us because I think a lot of travelers won't really understand why it's better to go through a platform like OVO Network instead of Airbnb. They won't understand that difference of like, well, at least through OVO Network, it's clear that the team has visited the chalet several times. We know about the quality, like the photos are super accurate. There's no lying, and that's a guarantee. But people just put Airbnb in the center of like, that's just what short-term rentals are. That's the definition of a short-term rental is Airbnb. So what's the difference between going there and on a different website?
Yeah, I think that's probably right, isn't it? Sorry, Sarah.
I think it's brand awareness too, Rafi. Like that, ultimately, that's what it is, right? A big brand like that, a global brand like Airbnb, is always going to have much more recognition than something hyper local. And so, I mean, obviously, I'm in the industry, so I know some of the tricks. So I'll get on Airbnb and use it more of like a meta search, and then if it is hosted by a property manager, then I usually just go straight to their website or we'll contact them directly. Just to see what's going on and what they advise. And also, like, sometimes they'll have properties that aren't even on the market, or you can find a deal that way. So, but I think a lot of people don't know that. They just think Airbnb is.
I agree. I wonder how many people are doing that. I do the same thing as well, but I wonder how many people in the industry are doing that. I think this leads us on nicely. So we've decided. So we're not a fan of the Wolf of Airbnb. That was that, but I really enjoyed it in the investigation. Thanks for sharing that one. That brings us on, Sarah, to an article you found, which is in Focus Wire. Spanish regulators fine Booking.com 413 million euros. That sounds like a lot of money.
It sounds like a lot of money to me. Yeah. I mean, compared with Booking's overall earnings, maybe it's not quite as significant, but it's a lot of money for sure. So this is a decision that came out on Tuesday from the CNMC, which is an independent regulation body responsible for enforcing competition laws in Spain. And they basically are allocating abusive behaviors due to its dominant position over the last 5 years. So, in particular, they cite two things. One is imposing different types of unfair commercial conditions on hotels um, that use the booking service, and then the other is restricting competition from other online travel agencies who don't have the magnitude to offer the same. Um, as a point of interest, Booking has controlled 70 to 90% of the Spanish hotel market since 2019, so that
Bad.
is huge. Um, and also their policy of what type of commission they charge is calculated based on how many reservations, how many nights were reserved through Booking.com's platform. So it's basically rewarding. You pay a lower commission if you have more nights booked on the platform, which kind of leads to unfair competition. um, and then there were three other things that were cited in here. So one is that hotels, for example, are not able to offer their property any cheaper on their own website. So direct bookings are basically lost, whereas Booking.com reserves the right, whenever you sign up with them, to unilaterally reduce pricing, even below that, at kind of at their discretion. There was also a citation of a lack of transparency in terms of the partnership programs that Booking.com has. Again, if you sign up for these programs like Preferred Plus or Genius, you can receive maybe discounted commission rates. And so it's kind of incentivizing you to join these, but then Booking controls your rates when you sign up for these programs. So it oftentimes can be a kind of a losing thing. And also, if you sign up for these programs, you get higher in the search rankings. So it's like, okay, I have to sign up for these programs so that I can get more bookings, but then you lose control of your pricing. So it's a really interesting one. Booking, of course, is refuting these claims. So they basically just said, look, we operate in a highly competitive market. There's a high degree of choice. We have to do something to differentiate ourselves. And they also mentioned that their partnership programs are not required. They're opt-in only for their partners. So this is an interesting one to watch. I think in particular, in March, a similar Italian competition authority opened a similar investigation into Booking.com's practices. So we will stay tuned to see what happens there. I think this originally came out in February, this investigation. It was mentioned in Booking's earnings call back in February. And it's just starting to shake out. So I'm curious to see what happens in Italy as well. And also curious if you guys think something similar. I guess first and foremost, like Rafi, are you affected by these same kind of things on Booking as the hotels are? Are you subject to those same kind of conditions? And then, do you think something similar is coming for short-term rentals? Because it's obviously just limited to their hotel segment.
We can definitely uplift our pricing on Booking.com. So we're able to get away with our website having the lowest price. So that's definitely good and essential for us. But we have experienced issues where Booking.com is providing discounts that end up providing a much lower price than what we have on our website. Other than that, the other issues that are mentioned, I'm not aware of in the short-term rental industry, but I definitely want to find out more about that. Because in my opinion, I mean, this is definitely unfair practices. I don't care what Booking.com say. It's extremely unfair and they shouldn't get away with it.
I think it's the point on pricing, isn't it? It's the fact that you lose control of your rate and Booking.com is allowed to discount. I think that's probably the thing that's potentially going to get them into hot water, because undoubtedly there's an argument that certainly hotels in, let's say, Spain, because I try and book a lot of them in Barcelona when I come over for work, have potentially not invested in their website infrastructures as well as they should have done, because they're probably getting, well, it says here, doesn't it, 70 to 90% of their bookings through this one channel. The headline of 70 to 90% of your bookings coming through one channel is it doesn't sound great, does it? It doesn't sound like a highly competitive market. But then I think what I'd be doing if I was a hotelier in these areas is maybe just reacting to these changes and saying now's the time to invest in the website, because we will be able to drive more direct traffic. Because that's the frustrating thing, is I pretty much always book. I would say I always book a hotel on Booking.com when I'm in Spain, because I try and go direct, but the websites often don't translate into English, or they don't look safe. And then you think, well, is my credit card going to be safe when I'm making this transaction? So it goes back to this idea of trust marketing, and making sure that when someone does come, and this is applicable for SDR or anything in hospitality, and Rafi, you'll know this, right? Is making sure your website feels secure, making sure bank details are protected, making sure customers understand the benefit of why they're coming to you directly. It doesn't just have to be a discount. It might be because you're wrapping your brand around a certain niche or a certain city or whatever you're trying to achieve. And I think maybe there's an argument that the hotels could be doing more to actually showcase, because it's marketing, right? It should be one of your main, it's pointless having a fantastic hotel with all these unique qualities if you're just content throwing it up on an aggregated listing site that doesn't allow you to showcase any of that nuance. And again, I think the learning there is applicable for SDR as much as it is for hotels.
Yeah.
Gang, really enjoyed that. So nice hanging out with you. What's everybody got going on, Sarah? What's the plan?
I've got a movie night. There's up in Montjuic in Barcelona. It's a big park. So tomorrow night, I've got a friend who just messaged me and said she's got an extra ticket. So usually they're sold out like months in advance. So we're gonna go up there. You just take your own little picnic, and you can like rent loungers and stuff and watch a movie. Also for Spain, they usually do them. I think the movie tomorrow night is in English with Spanish subtitles, which is fabulous. Love when I get to see things in original version. It makes me happy. It's few and far between over here. So that, and then I don't know, maybe just go out with friends, have a couple of drinks, chill weekend. What about you, Rafi?
I've got a wedding coming up this weekend. It's actually a colleague's wedding, so we're gonna end up there with a couple of other colleagues, and it's in Chamonix, so I'm looking forward to that.
Very nice. Very.
Leo, what have you got going on?
We're taking the two kids, so of 13 weeks and 2.5 years old, to a music festival. And this does seem like a bit of a silly idea, I'll admit. It's not going to be your usual like waking up late with a hangover and you're sort of rolling out and continuing to drink cider. More like kind of changing nappies and being on the whole time. But it's fun. It's really fun. Like it's a cool festival. There's talks. Maybe I'll get to see the odd talk while one of the kids is napping, and then there's music. But we're staying off-site in a short-term rental, so reflections to come next week. So I unfortunately won't be able to do any drinking because I'll be driving the whole time, which is a nightmare.
Oh, it's about time you did your time, Leo.
Stop it, Sarah. Well, I have.
Yeah,
but so my lovely partner didn't volunteer to do any of the driving, so she's just going to be drinking, enjoying it, and I'm unfairly lumbered with the driving.
9 months times 2, no drinking. It's your turn. You can't complain. Sorry.
Okay.
No support.
I'm going to lose that argument, aren't I? Significantly lose that. Okay, good. All right, guys. Well, look, so nice to see you. For those listening, thank you for joining us. If you've enjoyed today's show, please hit like, share, subscribe on all the usual social channels, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.